Welcome to the Doc Vatsa channel. Here we dive deep into evidence-based topics on sports medicine. We've tailored this for you elite esports athletes, sports medicine doctors, coaches, and parents. Today we're going to tackle a topic that I know is front of mind for many of you, dietary supplements and their role in optimizing performance.
You're right. It's a question I get all the time. And there's so much information and misinformation out there, it can be really tough to sift through it all.
Exactly. That's why we're going to dive into a really important source today, the IOC Consensus Statement on Dietary Supplements and the High-Performance Athlete. It's packed with insights from leading experts across various fields and organizations.
And that's what makes this statement so valuable. It's not just one person's opinion. It represents a real consensus from the top minds in sports medicine and nutrition.
Absolutely. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say supplements? It's not just vitamins and minerals, right?
Right. Think broader. It's everything from protein powders and sports drinks to those more specialized products promising to boost your energy or sharpen your focus. And that's where the challenge lies. There's just so much variety, it's hard to know where to even begin.
And that leads to our next point. The statement highlights how widespread supplement use is, not just among pros, but across all levels of sport. I mean, who hasn't been tempted to try that new pre-workout drink or that gamer-focused supplement? That promises to boost your KD ratio.
It's understandable. Athletes are always looking for an edge, especially in the incredibly competitive world of esports. And let's be honest, convenience plays a role too. Sometimes it feels easier to just pop a pill or mix a powder than to meal prep perfectly every day.
I get it.
Hmm.
But the statement emphasizes the need to be critical
Yeah.
and look beyond the marketing hype. It's about making informed decisions based on solid evidence, not anecdotal stories or influencer endorsements.
Right. And the statement actually provides a helpful framework for evaluating evidence, which I think is so important for both athletes and the people guiding them. They emphasize the importance of looking for studies that have been conducted in a rigorous scientific way. Things like randomized controlled trials, those are the gold standards, so to speak, and they give us the most reliable information about a supplement's true effects.
You're always talking about the importance of context, so I'm curious, how does that apply here, specifically to esports?
That's a great question. When we're evaluating research on supplements for esports, we have to consider the unique demands of these games. For example, a study on caffeine and endurance in marathon runners might not translate directly to a game like League of Legends, where cognitive skills and reaction time are paramount.
Okay, that makes sense. So moving deeper into the statement, it breaks down supplements into different categories, starting with those intended to address nutrient deficiencies. As an expert, what are some of the key deficiencies you see in esports athletes, and why are they important to address?
Well, one of the biggest issues I see is iron deficiency, which can lead to fatigue and decreased cognitive performance. Iron is crucial for oxygen transport, and even a slight deficiency can significantly impact an athlete's ability to perform at their peak. Think about the intense focus and split-second decision-making required in esports. Every millisecond counts.
And are there other deficiencies we need to be aware of?
Absolutely. Vitamin D is another one that's often overlooked. It plays a role in muscle function and immune health, both of which are crucial for esports athletes who are training and competing at a high level.
So before we even consider those performance-enhancing supplements, it's crucial to make sure we have a solid nutritional foundation.
Exactly. The statement really stresses that point. It's about getting the basics right first. And that means getting a comprehensive assessment from a qualified sports nutritionist to identify any potential deficiencies before randomly supplementing.
So it's not just about what we're putting into our bodies, but also about understanding what our bodies are actually needing. It's a personalized approach, just like everything else in performance optimization.
That's right. Now let's move on to the category that everyone's probably most curious about. Supplements specifically designed for performance enhancement.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting, because there are some supplements out there that actually have solid scientific backing when it comes to boosting certain aspects of performance.
Exactly. The statement actually highlights a handful of these superstar supplements, as you might call them. We have caffeine, creatine monohydrate, nitrate, sodium bicarbonate, and potentially beta-alanine.
Let's break those down a bit, starting with caffeine, since it seems to be everywhere these days, especially in the gaming world.
Caffeine is interesting because we're all familiar with it, but it's actually a powerful ergogenic aid when used strategically. Studies have shown that it can improve alertness, reaction time, and even endurance, all things that are critical in esports.
But I remember you mentioning that there's a sweet spot when it comes to caffeine dosage.
Absolutely. The statement recommends a dosage of 3-6 milligrams per kilogram of body mass for optimal performance benefits. But exceeding this amount doesn't necessarily translate to better results and could actually lead to negative side effects like anxiety, jitters, and difficulty sleeping.
It's not about chugging energy drinks all day long. It's about finding that optimal dose that works for you
Yeah,
and incorporating it strategically into your routine.
right. And that brings us to another point the statement makes: individual response. What works for one athlete may not work for another. Factors like genetics, training history, sleep patterns, and even your usual caffeine intake can all influence how you respond to a supplement.
Okay, so caffeine is a bit more nuanced than I realized. What about creatine? I know a lot of athletes use it, but I'm not entirely sure how it works.
Creatine is actually one of the most well-researched supplements out there, and it has a pretty impressive track record. When it comes to enhancing strength and power output, imagine needing that extra burst of speed to make a game-winning play. Creatine can help you get there.
That makes sense. But does it have any specific benefits for esports athletes?
While most of the research on creatine has focused on traditional sports, there's growing evidence suggesting that it can also benefit cognitive function, particularly short-term memory and processing speed. These are key skills in many esports, so the potential benefits are certainly there.
So it might not just be about physical performance,
Yeah.
but also about optimizing those mental processes
Yeah.
that are so crucial in competitive gaming.
Exactly. Now let's touch on the other supplements mentioned in the statement: nitrate, sodium bicarbonate, and beta-alanine.
Okay, fill us in on those.
Nitrate, found naturally in foods like beetroot, has been shown to improve blood flow and oxygen delivery to muscles. This can potentially enhance endurance and reduce fatigue, which could be beneficial during those long, intense gaming sessions.
Interesting. So another potential tool in the arsenal for battling fatigue. What about sodium bicarbonate?
Sodium bicarbonate, or baking soda as it's commonly known, is often used by athletes in high-intensity, short-duration activities. To buffer lactic acid buildup and delay fatigue, it might have some application in esports, especially in games requiring bursts of intense activity.
And lastly, beta-alanine.
Beta-alanine is an amino acid that helps increase muscle carnosine levels. Carnosine acts as a buffer against acid buildup in muscles, which can improve performance during high-intensity exercise. The evidence for its benefits in esports is still emerging, but it's one to keep an eye on.
So we've got this core group of supplements that have shown some promise in enhancing performance, but the statement also talks about a whole category of supplements aimed at indirect performance enhancement, things like immune support, recovery, and body composition. What are your thoughts on those?
This is where things get a bit more complicated. While there are some supplements that show promise in these areas, the research specifically on esports athletes is often limited. For example, vitamin D and probiotics have been linked to immune function. But we need more studies on elite esports players to confirm these benefits in their specific context.
So we can't just extrapolate from the general population to esports athletes.
Exactly. And when it comes to body composition, things get even more complex. Many supplements claim to promote fat loss or muscle gain, but the evidence is often lacking. And there can be potential risks involved.
Like what kinds of risks?
Well, some supplements marketed for weight loss can contain stimulants or other ingredients that can have negative side effects, especially when combined with the stress and pressure of competition. And manipulating body composition too drastically, especially without proper guidance, can backfire and actually hinder performance.
That's a really important point. It's not just about chasing a certain physique. It's about optimizing your health and well-being. For long-term success.
Absolutely. Now, the statement also delves into the potential downsides of supplement use. And this is something I think we need to talk about, frankly.
Yes, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a misconception that supplements are harmless, especially those that are widely available.
Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Even seemingly harmless supplements can have adverse effects if used incorrectly, or if they interact with other medications or pre-existing health conditions.
And then there's the issue of contamination, which is a huge concern, especially for athletes, subject to anti-doping regulations.
Right. Contamination is a serious issue. The supplement industry isn't as tightly regulated as pharmaceuticals, which means there's a risk of products being contaminated with substances that aren't listed on the label. And for athletes subject to anti-doping rules, this can have devastating consequences.
That's a scary thought. It's not just about intentionally taking banned substances. You could unknowingly ingest something. That triggers a positive test just because of a contaminated supplement.
Exactly. And the statement actually highlights the strict liability principle in anti-doping, which means athletes are responsible for whatever is found in their system, regardless of intent.
So even if you didn't mean to take a prohibited substance, you can still face penalties if it shows up in your test.
That's right.
So how can athletes protect themselves? This all sounds pretty risky.
There are steps you can take to minimize the risk. The statement mentions third-party auditing programs that test supplements for quality and purity. Look for products that have certifications from reputable organizations, like Informed Sport or NSF certified for sport. It's not a foolproof guarantee, but it does add another layer of protection.
So doing your research and choosing your supplements carefully is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely, and I can't stress this enough. Talk to your doctor or a qualified sports nutritionist who specializes in anti-doping. They can help you assess your individual needs, make informed decisions about supplement use, and navigate the complexities of anti-doping regulation.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the different types of supplements and their potential benefits, to the importance of evidence-based decision-making and understanding the risks involved. What are some of the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that supplements can play a role in an athlete's nutrition and performance plan, but they shouldn't be viewed as a magic bullet. A solid foundation of training, proper nutrition, adequate sleep, and stress management are all essential for optimal performance. Supplements can complement these, but they can't replace them.
And it sounds like taking a personalized approach is key.
Absolutely. What works for one athlete might not work for another. Factors like genetics, training history, diet, and individual goals all come into play. That's why it's so important to work with qualified professionals who can help you tailor your approach to your specific needs.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question to ponder. Given the potential risks and uncertainty around many supplements, what factors would ultimately sway your decision to use or avoid them?
That's a great question to reflect on. I would encourage listeners to consider their overall health goals, their risk tolerance, and the specific demands of their sport or e-sport. Weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks. And make sure you're doing it for the right reasons,
Right.
ultimately. It's about making informed choices that align with your values and priorities.
This has been a deep dive into the world of dietary supplements, and we've covered a lot of important information. We hope you found it valuable and insightful. Thanks for joining us on the Doc Vasta channel. Remember, knowledge is power, right, when it comes to your health and performance.